Gentlemen, I wanted to film you a video today on 3 things to do after a breakup. I actually, in the last month, went through a breakup. I split up from my missus, who I'd been in a relationship for nearly 4 years, so a substantial part of my life. I actually did do a raw reaction, very unscripted video that is available. The only reason I haven't put it out is well, it's a very raw one. It's more for me, but I went through it just recently, and I think there's a lot of nuggets of information there that might be of really good resource to men who are maybe very recently going through a breakup. So it would mean a great deal to me if you could comment down below and just let me know if that's of resource to you. So yeah, but today I wanted to go through 3 things in which I feel is going to be of great utility to any men who have gone through a breakup in the last 3 to 6 months. And even if you're in a relationship with your missus at the moment, I think there's some really great nuggets of information in here that are going to aid to the longevity of that relationship. I think most men are fairly simple, and once we find a good woman to be with, we just really care about staying with that woman and hopefully seeing that monogamous relationship out into the future. But let's get into the video here. So the first thing you should be doing after the diminishment, the breakup, is give yourself time to mourn. Which may be not a obvious answer, may not be a particularly cliche masculine example of what you should do, but I think it's really important that you exercise a little bit of vulnerability. Speaking about myself personally, this was 4 years I'd spent with somebody who made me grow. You're not the same person you were at the start of the relationship and after the relationship. So give yourself time to mourn, give yourself time to not bring any baggage into the next relationship that you go into, because that's going to be an absolute catastrophe. I've done that before. I've put my hands up and I've brought unwanted emotional drama into my next relationship purely because I didn't go through that mourning process. Many men practice a form of escapism, and I think women probably more to a heightened degree do this better than men, where they try to escape from their emotions that they're feeling in that previous relationship, and they bring that baggage back into the next relationship, and that will inevitably fail. So it's just more wasted time. I also think it's important that you say everything you need to with your ex. You never want to leave anything unsaid. Now, luckily for me, that was a fairly amicable breakup, as amicable as breakups can be. But what is giving me a lot of peace and why I'm handling this pretty well, to be utterly transparent with you, is I said everything that I needed to say. And I'm at peace with the fact that I certainly made my mistakes in the relationship, but I owned up to them. I took accountability for my mistakes. And when I look back on those 4 years that I spent with my partner, all I'll have is happy memories. There's not an extended period of time that I can think of at the top of my head where I will have any regrets. And that's also as difficult as these situations can be, such a good position for you to be in. So the second step is to evaluate the relationship. Do a post-mortem on why you believe that relationship failed. As a man, I think it's really important, and I alluded to it there in the previous statement, that you take accountability in a relationship. I like to say, and this might sound a little harsh, pardon me, is that if a relationship fails, it's your fault. That might be a difficult and a bitter pill to swallow for most men, but in my opinion, the reason my previous relationship didn't work was it was mostly all my fault. Well, it was my fault, and there's no. I think that's the healthiest way to look at it, and I don't mean that from a perspective of that you're condemning yourself and you're putting yourself down and you're otherwise giving yourself a lot of negativity. I don't mean that. I mean that you have to take ownership in everything you do in that relationship, and when you do this, you actually give yourself more freedom. You actually give yourself more power to bring into your next relationship, because you analyze the things that went wrong, even if you feel it is on the hurt end. Like let's say your partner cheated on you in a relationship. The first girl I was with cheated on me. I like to say that might be your fault. Again, another bitter pill to swallow, but I really do believe that if you're going into a relationship with somebody who has a tendency to cheat on people or have that characteristic, then you've made a poor judgment call right from the beginning. And many of you may say, well, I couldn't know that. I disagree. I really think that if you're a good judge of character, you'll be able to tell the individuals that are going to show loyalty to you. Behavior has a pattern, and if you see that pattern in a previous relationship the other individual was in, more than likely it's going to continue. So I like to say take full extreme accountability. That's Jocko Willink for you. So everything is your fault. Always take accountability for that. Another point is you need to remember that you're leading the relationship. Okay, and this comes part into your evaluation, that there isn't a ship that doesn't have one captain. There's no ship that has two captains. There's no project that has more than two team leaders. There's no company that has more than one director or a CEO who's leading the company. When you enter into a relationship, the man typically, and there are women who are more masculine and men who are more feminine, but typically men want to play that masculine role and they want to take the lead. And I can say on my part, I wasn't taking the lead, and that was part and parcel my lacking in that particular relationship, where my attention and energy was spent elsewhere, not in directing where I wanted my relationship to go. So it's really important that the natural energies that are within men and women will be to their natural predisposition. So masculine men want to display masculine energy, which is typically order. So creating order in your relationship, where you want it to go, what's your 5-year plan, where you want to live, etc., etc. And women typically, if they are in touch with their feminine energy, they want to be that nurturer. They want to be, they want to show a more yielding energy to you as a man, and they want to yield. They don't want to sit in that masculine energy more often than not. So remember that you have a natural predisposition to lead, and if you aren't leading, women are generally going to build up a kind of resentment towards that. So complacency, I didn't mention here, complacency is something that I certainly fell into, and it's certainly not certainly not conducive to the future of your relationship whatsoever. I have a real problem with men that put all the blame on other people for their actions. I really think it's a very victim mentality way of thinking, and it's very easy for people to do that. It's very easy to say, oh, it's all the other person's fault, rather than looking at yourself. This is part of the masculine theory. This is part of recognizing the advantages you have as a man in respect to the control that you can exert on the world. Okay, you have a natural tendency to step into that energy, so step into that energy and stop blaming other people for your shortcomings. Like I mentioned, it's very akin to victim behavior. And the last piece of advice I would give you is rediscover. So arguably the most important phase in which many men go either two ways. They either rediscover themselves, rediscover their purpose, their meaning, their direction, their happiness in their lives, or they start to devolve into some form of apathy. Now, this is a very, very sensitive issue, and it can go either two ways. If you run away from the emotions that are coming up when you do go through that breakup, pardon me, Jesus, typically it's going to go into apathy. You're going to start to find escapism in things like smoking, in things like porn, in things like drugs, in things like drinking. It's very easy to go for the bottle and drown your emotions. But it takes real, again, accountability and responsibility to look at the emotions that you're feeling. Maybe it is shame, maybe it is inadequacy, maybe it is depression, maybe it is some of the other negative, lower qualities of how we experience our lives, and start to identify with them and spiral. Many men also lose their identity in their relationships. This is what happened in my very first relationship when I was very, very young. I think I was like 15 or 16. And that was a terrible, terrible breakup because I put all my happiness on the other person. If you're ever going into a relationship and you're not happy with yourself, you're not ready for a relationship. Might be cliche, might be very trite for me to say, but many men they put all their onus, all their attention, all their energy outside of them to women. I'm going to be happy when I have somebody to show me some kind of compassion and empathy. I'm going to be happy when I have somebody to fuck. And it gives all the power again to forces outside of you and not keeping it inside of you. Okay. The next relationship that I get into, I'm going to be coming from a place of concrete and composure, strength, ultimately. very, very whole in myself. And if ever I decide to add somebody to my empire, to my life, to this wonderful life that I'm creating by myself, it's not going to be dependent on happiness there. It's going to be dependent on whether I think this individual can complement the lifestyle that I've already got. And this is a very, very, very dangerous part of moment, because many men will go on the rebound. They'll find other women to sleep with. They'll get into some kind of entanglement. Jesus, sound like Jada Pinkett Smith there. Entanglement, fucking hell. They'll get into some other kind of situationship, let's call it, with another woman, and they'll hide. They'll put all their negative emotions, they'll put all their happiness on this other relationship, and it's another terrible, terrible position to be in. So it's really, really important that you come back home to your meaning, to your purpose in your life, and you start to hit the gym harder again. You recognize that you have to keep yourself healthy, that you're working on your business or your 9 to 5, what's bringing you meaning in your life, what you can offer service to the world. And you can either go kind of this way, which is the latter point, or you can start to come on the upswing. You really, really want to be here, and the sooner you can get back on the horse, so to speak, the better. And I'm not just saying that you shouldn't have that mourning process where you grieve, because it is a grieving process. You lose somebody who you think is going to be a part of your life ultimately, and you don't just lose the person, you lose the future that you thought you were creating together. So it's a very, very difficult period, and it's really important that you don't lose yourself in that as well. Another point I really want to mention, but I also remember that I mentioned it in my reaction video to my just a off-the-cuff reaction video to my breakup, in which I talk about what I think is really, really valuable to keep the longevity in your relationship alive. And I just want to mention here I think it's so crucial. If you're a man, you're watching this now, you've sat through my ranting, and you are in a relationship. If you don't do this practice already, I think it's the most important thing you have to do. You have to, every single month, sit down with your missus or your significant other, and you have to talk about your values. You have to talk about your meaning in your life and your purpose and where it's going. Because otherwise you'll drift apart. People change. That's just it. People change. People are not the same people that you meet 5 years ago. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago. Far from it. Far from it. I wasn't even religious 5 years ago. I didn't even have any kind of spiritual inclination 5 years ago. I don't even think I was reading books 5 years ago. So again, the personality, the persona that you have will change very, very drastically. And it's really important that you sit down every month and you talk about your meanings, your values, and that they're congruent. And ultimately you're heading in the same direction together. There is I don't think it's impossible, but I think it is very, very difficult to be with somebody that has different values to you. And by values, I might mean the particular paradigm that you view the world. So let's take a political paradigm. I lean more right, I think, than I do left at this time in my life. I would say that I'm relatively conservative. My ex-missus, very, very liberal, more left-leaning, more compassionate, love people more. Not saying that I don't, but she had that, what would you say, natural predisposition to that. And a lot of her decisions were governed on empathy, and mine were governed on logic, I would say, more rational thinking. Not to say that I didn't have empathy, it just I empathize in a different way. I empathize long-term instead of short-term. I think it's, put it this way, if I had to tell somebody bad news, I would tell them up front. Like if somebody I had to let go in my business, I would tell them, you're fired for this reason. That's maybe not a good example, but let's say somebody had some bad news, maybe a death in the family or whatever, I would tell them straight up. My ex-missus, I think, would have more sensitivity to wanting to stop pain, and giving that information that would give them that pain wouldn't be the priority. So again, my empathy is more directed in the sense that I think it's beneficial for people long term to get the truth up front, even if it hurts them. I don't think my ex-missus would share the same opinion of that. I could be wrong. We haven't had this discussion, but that's generally how I would describe her personality and her psychology. And please, 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 if you're a man and you want to see longevity in your relationship, it's so, so important. Talk about political issues. Talk about, transgenderism and the political nature and global warming and all that stuff. It's really, really important that you're on the same page, because those initial cracks will start to come into bigger cracks later on in your relationship, and it will break. It will break. So, gentlemen, that's 3 things to do after a breakup. I thought this was, again, a little bit off the cuff. Do let me know if you'll be interested in seeing my raw reaction to that initial breakup. But otherwise, take what is valuable in this video, discard which is not, and I will speak to you again very, very soon, gents. Take care.